ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be my most anticipated book releases for February. Now, I am trying in 2021 to kind of do my anticipated releases monthly as opposed to last year I did one for the first half of the year and one for the second half of the year. I feel like this way I not only have more time to research, but I also have more time to really delve into each specific month and pick out more than just maybe one or two different releases for each month. Some months I might combine anticipated releases videos if there aren't too many that I'm looking forward to, but February is not one of those months because I think looking at my spread, at least right now, for my anticipated releases, the most books are coming out in February that are on my radar, which is a little bit intimidating, and it's going to be a little bit hard for me because I am on a book buying ban until I move this summer, so it's easier for me to pack up all my books and move. So I'm really hoping that my library can come through with some of these and I'll be able to read these sooner rather than later, but I've got a really good list of science fiction, I've got some fantasy, some speculative fiction. So if you're interested in any of that, keep on watching and we're just gonna dive right into my most anticipated releases of February 2021. Not only is February a really big month for releases, but February 2nd in particular seems to have most of the books on this list are coming out very early February. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, and this comes out February 2nd by Tor Books. Tor has done like an amazing job promoting this book. It wasn't initially on my radar at all, but then they just kept talking about it and kept doing all these little promotions and author interviews, and it just looks really fun. I do not know much about this other than the fact that it's kind of compared to a red, white, and royal blue in space. So this is a male-male romance in which a wayward scandal magnate prince and a very serious duty-bound scholar are drafted into a political marriage and forced to work together in order to prevent an interplanetary war. Sounds interesting. I'm interested to see whether this is going to be a romance in a sci-fi setting or a sci-fi with some romance in it. Either way, I'm looking forward to this one. I'm definitely trying to not take myself as seriously this year and try and dive into more books that may not initially sound like my thing, because I'm not a big fan of romance-centered books, but then I did my top 10 books of 2020 and there were surprisingly a lot of character-driven books with some romance in there, so I'm giving it a go. I'm trying to see maybe what about that subgenre I might like, but I am hoping this is still going to be like a sci-fi intrigue story. We'll have to see. The next book also comes out on February 2nd, and that is What Big Teeth by Szabo. And the subtitles for this one are Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children meets The Addams Family, so that already sounds interesting. The cover looks amazing as well, and this is about a girl named Eleanor, and she's trying to reconnect with her monstrous family. I don't know much more than that, but I think it has to deal with, I believe her family actually is monstrous and they're supernatural creatures, something like that, especially with the kind of nods to the Addams Family. So I'm really interested to see that, and I think that something happens and the once estranged family has to band together and fight that, potentially. I'm not sure. I'm going into this one purposely vague, like I like to do with a lot of horror and speculative fiction. So the cover is really cool. I really love this cover, and I really enjoy horror that has to do with like themes of family. That's some of my favorite horror sort of books or movies or TV series really have to do with that family aspect, so I'm looking forward to that one. The next book coming out February 2nd is The Project by Courtney Summers, and this is a thriller about a girl whose sister joins a cult, and she receives word that maybe people are dying mysterious deaths, and this cult is just not great. I mean, it's a cult, but it's very much pitched as sort of a utopia, and it has a really good press image and everything like that, so no one really believes her when she thinks that her sister is in danger, so she has to go and infiltrate this cult and hopefully extricate her sister from this position. Now, Courtney Summers wrote Sadie, which I really enjoyed the themes of sisterhood in Sadie. I thought the dynamic and the relationship between the sisters was done so well, so it was really exciting to see that Courtney Summers also was doing sort of a horror and thriller book about this sister bond being at the core of the plot. So I'm really looking forward to reading it for those aspects, and also just cults terrify me. As someone who often worries about the amount of like horror and dark fiction that I read maybe desensitizing me to things, and I don't get scared very easily, but cults definitely, they freak me out. So I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's just gonna be very creepy and unsettling. The next book on my radar comes out the 2nd as well, and that is A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel, and this comes out by Tor. So this is supposed to be a sci-fi thriller that is taking place in the 1940s, and that kind of explores the amorality of progress and the nature of violence set against a backdrop of Nazi Germany, I believe, which is intriguing. As a kid, I used to love historical fiction. I used to read like the Dear America books and the American Girl doll books and just like the companion nonfiction books that came with both of those all the time. And I used to read a lot of historical fiction about this time period. And I don't really read historical fiction anymore. I am trying to maybe get back into it, but I'm definitely intrigued now, just as someone who doesn't prefer contemporaries. If there's like any sort of horror or fantasy or sci-fi elements in historical fiction, then I'm much more likely to pick it up. This sounds like it is going to be like an alternate history sort of tale in the 1940s with sci-fi elements. And this says it's a darkly satirical first contact thriller, and it's the first book in a series. So I'm very intrigued. I haven't read anything by this author before, which I know I need to do. This is definitely, I would say maybe along there with Winter's Orbit, probably the book that is like most out of my comfort zone, but I'm trying to push that this year, so I'm intrigued. I'm also intrigued because I have been hearing like 2 different things, whether it is in fact like a truly alternate history of 1940s or if it's like our timeline 1940s, but there are some things like going on behind the scenes, if that makes sense. So I'm interested in seeing the direction of that book and where the series goes. Next on my list we have The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor. This comes out February 9th by Ballantine Books. So this is a thriller about a reverend who is a single parent to his 14-year-old daughter, and both of them move to this really small town that has a very dark history with several really dark, really traumatic things happening in the town's past that no one speaks about, and it's maybe sort of all interconnected, and maybe they find themselves at the very center of this. Again, it's a thriller, so I like going in as vague as possible. But it has a lot of tropes that I really like in horrors and thrillers about some outsiders moving to a very small, isolated town. I don't know, it kind of gives off from the vibes that this is maybe set in the past, but it's set in the English countryside in a very isolated, I think, coastal town. And I just really like that concept in horrors and thrillers of outsiders moving to this very insulated place and kind of having to figure out what all is happening in the town, who they can trust, who they can't trust, is everyone in on it, are there maybe some supernatural things going on. I haven't actually read anything by CJ Tudor before, but I do hear consistently good reviews about their other book, The Chalk Man, I believe it's called, but this book just sounds like it's a little bit more up my alley in terms of books that I'd like to pick up from them. The next book on my list, also coming out on February 9th by Ace Books, is going to be The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichec. This is about a banished witch that falls in love with Loki, and she risks the wrath of the gods in this novel that reimagines Norse mythology. So this is slated for fans of Madeline Miller and Circe in the Song of Achilles. So it seems from the premise that it's going to be like, I feel like in a lot of mythology, there's always these woman falls in love with a god and then bad things happen because, you know, the gods are always getting into each other's business. So it sounds like it's playing with those very traditional mythology tales, but taking it on a new spin. Cover looks gorgeous. I'm very interested in reading some more Norse mythology reimaginings because I love mythology. I haven't read a lot about Norse mythology, but I'm really excited to give it a go with this book. The next book on my radar is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. This also comes out from Tor Books, and it comes out February 16th. And this is a thriller that is compared to Westworld, so it's a sci-fi slash thriller. And this is about a woman named Evelyn who is an award-winning scientist, and she makes a genetic clone of herself. And this clone starts having an affair with Evelyn's husband. And then I'm not gonna read any more of the synopsis because it's a thriller, but that is just like the start of the action, and then a bunch of events happen and you have to kind of figure out is it the Echo Wife? Is it the clone? Or is it actually Evelyn? It sounds like a sci-fi thriller, like Parent Trap sort of story. Like you got the Echo Wife, so I'm guessing it's gonna be like, they obviously are identical to each other, so who is who? Dark things are happening, who's responsible for them? This sounds really intriguing. Sarah Gailey, I have only read a couple of things from them, but they come up with such interesting premises, and when you read the synopsis, they sound interesting, and then you read them, and it's completely different than what you imagined based on the synopsis, but in a good way. I really like the spins that they take on their books, so I am highly interested in that. It definitely seems like February is going to be the month of like science fiction for me, which bizarre, right? So that's pretty cool. The next book on my radar is All Girls by Emily Layden. This comes out February 16th by St. Martin's Press. Apparently it's following 1 year in the lives of these 9 young women at this school, and there's apparently a big scandal that happens during this year, and the administration is trying to silence something about the scandal, you know, because typical prestigious boarding school trope, I feel like, which is exciting. So it says it explores what it means to grow up in a place that promises you the world when the world still isn't yours for the taking. So this definitely gives me like dark academia vibes because it is set in a school, something terrible happens, and it's just working through these 9 girls and how maybe they're involved with the event, how they're impacted by the event, and I'm just a sucker for a book set in a boarding school. I don't know what that's about because I never went to any sort of boarding school or private school, like I went to a public school, so maybe it's that intrigue, but I just really love dark academia and books set at boarding schools where something sinister happens. That trope really works for me. So I'm excited to see where this story goes, and I'm also intrigued by the 9 different protagonists. That seems like a very, very large number of protagonists. So I'm interested in seeing how that is dealt with through this novel. The next book is one where it is technically the 3rd in a series. It's probably just like more anticipated for me than it is for like a general audience because, you know, there are already 2 books in this series out, but I really enjoy it, and I just felt like this was so appropriate for February and, you know, the themes of love and Valentine's Day. And this series is so wonderfully wholesome that I just had to add it. And that is going to be Teen Titans Beast Boy Loves Raven by Cami Garcia, illustrated by Gabriel Piccolo. And this is the 3rd in the series, but they're graphic novels, so you have plenty of time in the next couple of days / weeks to read the first 2 installations, Raven and Beast Boy, before diving into this one, and this comes out February 23rd. It takes place after the events of the first 2 books in this graphic novel series, Raven and Beast Boy respectively. We have them meeting. I'm very excited for this one because the first 2 graphic novels in the series, they each focus on a different character, and I absolutely love the Teen Titans, so I was really excited to see Raven's background story and Beast Boy's background story. It's going to be really interesting to see the group start to assemble, and I just absolutely love the couple vibes that these 2 give off. I'm really not particular about any sort of ships in the Teen Titans universe because when I watched the cartoon initially, I think I was just too young to have any sort of opinions on that sort of thing. I really like this pairing of Beast Boy and Raven because it has one of my favorite character dynamics in terms of relationships that just work so well, whereas like one person in the relationship is funny and outgoing and sweet and kind and just like a cinnamon roll, and then the other character is just kind of more dark and mysterious and introverted, and kind of like the whole Andy Dwyer and April Ludgate sort of relationship. If you've ever watched Parks and Rec, that dynamic is just wonderful. I feel like that's going to be a similar dynamic in here, and I'm really excited to continue reading this one. Moving on, next book on the list. That is going to be A Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth. This is a first book in a series. It's 500 something pages, which is so exciting. I love a good chunky fantasy. The cover is gorgeous. I love this cover. And this is the first book in an urban fantasy series set in the magical underworld of Toronto. It follows a queer cast of characters racing to stop a serial killer whose crimes could expose the hidden world of fairies to humans. So you follow an Ironborn half-fae outcast of a royal fae family. You have a fury that is exiled to Earth from the immortal realm that really wants revenge. There's a fae prince. There's a brooding guardian that guards this prince. Just sounds like a really interesting cast of gritty and dark, maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, morally gray characters. I don't think I've ever read a fantasy that is Canadian based before. I don't think I've read too many books actually, just overall that are Canadian based, and I really loved House of Earth and Blood last year, so I'm looking to get more into urban fantasy this year, kind of check it out, see what I like, and just, this looks really, really promising. I'm really excited to pick it up. I have no idea how long this series is going to be. It already does have a sequel slated for 2022. This seems like definitely a bigger investment to dive into, just in terms of page count and the fact that it might be a sprawling urban fantasy series, but I'm really looking forward to this one. This might be, I think this is in, if I had to do an anticipated releases of the year, not just monthly, I think this would be on that yearly list because this just looks like a whole lot of fun. And then the last book on this list that is also the first book in a new series is going to be The Black Coast, the first book in the God King Chronicles series by Mike Brooks. And this one I had originally put down on my master list that it came out the 25th. It actually comes out the 18th by Orbit Books, so apologies that this isn't completely in order by date of publication. This is going to be a sprawling fantasy series, and the reason why I'm really interested in picking this one up is that apparently it has a lot of dragons in it, and I absolutely love dragons. It says The Black Coast is the start of an unmissable series filled with war dragons, armored knights, seafaring raiders, dangerous magic, and crowd-pleasing battle scenes. I love dragons, so that'll be intriguing. And then I haven't really read a lot of fantasy that takes place on the sea, and I'm interested to see where this kind of goes with that. But I'm always on the lookout for high fantasies that really utilize dragons in the plot, so looking forward to that one as well. And those are all the books that I'm really looking forward to in the month of February that are coming out. If I missed any that you think that I would like and should be on my radar, definitely leave it in a comment down below. There are just too many books to keep track of, so I'm sure that I missed some good ones, so leave them down below. But if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content from me, stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all on the other side. Bye!